All right, so you've got an idea. Not for an app, but for something you can actually hold in your hands. A real physical product. Well, you're in for a journey. Today, we're diving into the roadmap for that journey using the key lessons from the book The Hardware Startup. This is for anyone looking to build something real. Look, let's just get this out of the way right up front. There's a saying in Silicon Valley, and you hear it all the time for a reason. Hardware is hard. Now, that's not meant to scare you off. It's meant to prepare you. Because making something you can touch is a totally different ballgame than just writing code. And here's why. It really comes down to this. Atoms versus bits. Software is made of bits. It's flexible. You can change it on the fly with a few keystrokes. A bug fix? A new feature? You just push an update. But hardware is made of atoms. Once you've made it, it's pretty much fixed. Tooling up to make it is incredibly expensive, and every little change, every iteration, is slow and costs a ton of money. You can't just push an update to a piece of plastic. And that brings us to the first big trap, the first trial that every single hardware founder faces, the illusion of the prototype. This is a really critical point where that initial excitement can be, well, seriously misleading. So, you've done it. You've got this beautiful 3D printed prototype in your hands. It works. It feels amazing. It feels like you're maybe 90% of the way there, right? Like the hard part is over. But the truth is, this is where the real work is just getting started. And this means you have to totally shift your mindset. See, a prototype is not the first version of your product. Its one and only job is to help you learn. You use it to get feedback from actual users. You use it to prove your concept to investors. And you use it to fail early, often, and cheap so that your final product doesn't. So how do you get from that one single prototype to, say, 10,000 of them? Well, that requires a very specific engineering discipline. It's called Design for X, or DFX for short. It's the whole process of designing your product not just to work, but to be built efficiently and affordably when you're making thousands of them. DFX basically forces you to ask all the hard questions right at the beginning. Can a factory actually make this part consistently? Can a worker put it together quickly and without errors? Can we test every single unit to make sure it works? And probably the most important question, can we do all of that without going broke? That is what planning for real success looks like. Okay, so you've designed your product for manufacturing. You've thought it all through. Now you step into the second trial, what I like to call the labyrinth of production. This is where you go from making one of something to making thousands. Over and over and over again. And again, the mindset has to do a complete 180. Prototyping, that's all about experimentation. It's about burning money to learn. Manufacturing, on the other hand, is about process, discipline, and repetition. It's where you finally get a chance to make money, but only if that process is absolutely perfect. And process is a massive understatement. Even a simple little gadget isn't made in one place. You'll have one factory making the plastic case, another one making the circuit boards, the PCBA, then a totally different factory assembling it all, and maybe even another one boxing it all up. You're not just managing a factory, you are conducting an entire orchestra of specialists. So think about that orchestra for a second. Every single player has to do their part perfectly. But what happens if that tiny 10-cent screw that holds the whole thing together just doesn't show up on time? Or what if your sensor supplier has a 2-week delay? It's simple. You ship nothing. The entire production line just grinds to a halt. Your success, your company, it all hangs by this incredibly fragile, complicated thread. It all depends on a dozen different things all going exactly right. And that leads us to the final and, frankly, the most dangerous trial of them all. And this one isn't an engineering problem. It's a financial one. It's called the Valley of Death. So before you even sold a single product, you have to pay your factory for the expensive steel molds and the tooling they need to make your stuff. And we're talking about a huge check. Right away, cash is just flowing out of your bank account. And you're not done yet. Then the factory calls and says they're ready to start production. Now you have to write another massive check to pay for that first run of 10,000 units, so even more cash is flying out the door. So for weeks, maybe even months, while your product is being made and put on a boat and shipped, all you see is money pouring out. And you know what's coming in? Zero. Absolutely nothing. This period, this terrifying gap between paying for all your inventory and finally getting paid by your customers, That is the valley of death, and this is where most hardware startups die. Not because they had a bad idea, not because the product was bad, but simply because they ran out of money. So, how in the world do you survive this? Well, this is where crowdfunding platforms like Kickstarter come in, but not for free money. That's the wrong way to think about it. Their real superpower is market validation. A successful campaign is proof. It proves that real, paying customers want what you're making before you have to cut those massive checks to the factory. It's the bridge that can get you across the valley. So after going through all of these trials, after navigating that whole gauntlet, you're left with a pretty fundamental choice.
After hearing all that, the world of software might seem pretty tempting, right? It might seem a lot safer. So, do you want to build an app?
Or is there something else you want to build? Do you want to build the tangible thing, the actual piece of the physical world that makes all that software possible in the first place? Do you want to build the device that the app runs on? It's hard, there's no doubt about it, but it is how the real world gets built. Subscribe to Lazy Reader to build the real world.